Draw Steel. Book 1, Heroes, Tactical, Heroic, Cinematic, Fantasy. Introduction. What is this game? This is a game about fighting monsters, about larger-than-life, extraordinary heroes plunging into battle against terrifying, monstrous enemies. That covers a lot. So let's get specific and talk about what this game is and what it is not. This game will absolutely feature dungeons, ancient, underground complexes filled with ravenous undead or creeping oozes. But it isn't a dungeon crawler. It's not about clearing rooms. It's not a survival horror game where you must track light and food and the weight of every object you carry. You can fight monsters in a dungeon, but the game is not about dungeons. Lots of games focus on that gameplay and do it really well, like Shadow Dart. It's not a wilderness exploration game, aka a hex crawl. It's not about surviving in extreme weather, getting lost, or trying to navigate your way back to safety. You can fight monsters in the wilderness, even run a whole campaign in the wilderness, but this game is not about the wilderness. We love games that focus on that fantasy, like Forbidden Lands. You can run adventures with horror themes, but this is not a horror role-playing game like Call of Cthulhu. Your sessions can and will feature comedy, but this isn't a comedy RPG like Paranoia. Draw Steel is definitely a game about creating amazing stories in which the heroes fight monsters and villains using strategy and tactics. Draw Steel has a lot of other tools, but fighting monsters is sort of non-negotiable. If you're looking for a game featuring extraordinary heroes overcoming dramatic villains without the focus on tactical combat, maybe check out Daggerheart, just right next door, alphabet-wise. We genuinely love all those games, but we love them because they focus on specific genres of gameplay and deliver on them really well. Our game is heroic fantasy. That's its genre. Extraordinary people fighting dragons and necromancers. But heroic fantasy is still a little too broad for our purposes, so we added 2 other keywords to explain how our game might be different from other games in this genre. Tactical and cinematic. These terms are just guidelines, a vibe, but we find them useful when trying to choose between different features. Both of these ideas are cool, but which is the most cinematic? The most heroic? So let's talk about what we mean when we use those terms. Tactical. Strategy is, what are we trying to do? Break a siege? Free a prisoner? Rescue a captive? Steal a tome of ancient lore? Strategy is about long-term goals. Tactics is about, how are we going to do that? We're going to surround them, sneak around them, pick them off one by one, kill their leader first, kill their priest first, no resurrections. In a tactical game, positioning matters, so our game is played on a grid. Effects and distances are measured in squares. This means all players are focused on the same problem, and there is no ambiguity regarding where the heroes and villains are in relation to each other. The Hobgoblin troopers are setting themselves up in a line to stop our Tactician and Fury from getting into melee with the Hobgoblin Warmage. We're all aware of what's happening, and we can talk about what we're going to do to stop it. That means teamwork matters. That's why the order of combat works the way it does, to encourage the players to plan. Okay, you use Concussive Slam on that trooper. It'll push him back. And on my turn, I can use Squad Forward to get us all into melee with the Death Captain. We think focusing on teamwork also makes the game more heroic. In a tactical game, you have many choices each combat round. You are never reduced to just swinging your sword. You have options. If we do a good job, you don't feel as if you outlasted your opponents because you wore their stamina down before they could reduce yours to 0. You feel like you beat those hobgoblins. through stealth and sorcery, coordination, and ferocity. As you play with the same group of characters, you learn what they can all do. You discover synergies, combos, some of them intended by the designers, some not. You start to learn these unique characters and to rely on them to do their cool things. It's a great feeling when another player comes up with a cool plan that relies on your unique abilities. You'll learn which characters are the squishies, who need to be protected or healed. You'll learn which characters can push themselves right to the edge and keep fighting. Don't worry about healing Barlica. She's our fury. She's happier with 3 stamina. Our game is not about tactics. It's not a war game, but it is tactical. Our game is definitely about heroism. For us, this means a couple of things. It means that we don't assume your character is primarily motivated by greed. They might be, but we don't assume that. Instead, we assume you're going to do the right thing. It might take some convincing, and there might be some reluctant heroes in your party, but that's part of the fun. You should absolutely be able to run a Chains of Acheron style campaign where the heroes are hard-bitten mercenaries in a morally ambiguous world, but that's not the baseline assumption. The fiction and adventures that inspire us feature epic villains trying to remake the world in their image, and the dashing, unyielding heroes who strive against them even in the face of impossible odds. So that's one component of the heroic keyword, but another component equally important is what kinds of things happen on screen, so to speak. This is closely related to the cinematic keyword. For instance, you never see Indiana Jones having to find a local sporting goods store because he needs to stock up on ammo. You never see Katniss Everdeen have to stop and take a shower because she stinks. These things do happen. No one watching Raiders of the Lost Ark thinks that Indy's gun is magic and doesn't need bullets, but we simply don't need to see Indy doing that stuff. We don't need to waste time on it. Likewise, in our game, we don't worry about stuff that heroes in fiction tend to not worry about. We don't worry how much everything you're carrying weighs. If you try to lift a bear, you might have trouble, sure. But nowhere on your character sheet are you tracking the weight of every item. You don't track food, such as rations, and you don't worry about how many torches you have. Light might factor into a specific environment, because that can be a fun tactical challenge, but the game doesn't expect that everyone is always worried about running out of light. Basically, we worry only about those things you'd see your characters doing in a movie, or a comic, or a novel about their adventures. Assume all the tedious stuff happens off-screen. Speaking of things happening on-screen, cinematic. Closely tied to the heroic keyword, the cinematic keyword is about how we all like abilities and features to be strongly evocative. You can imagine your character doing or saying these things. In All This Confusion is a good name for the Shadow's ability to slip out of melee and retreat to safety. The text of the ability says how it works, but the name creates an awareness that explains how it's working. When Sir Vanazor, the Dragon Knight Fury, leaps onto a goblin war spider, cleaving through the goblins, riding the creature in a single turn, you experience that action in your mind. It feels like a movie. It doesn't feel simply as if you rolled well, but like an epic scene, complete with slow motion and a Carpenter Brute soundtrack. You should imagine your tactician character leading the battle, granting your allies free strikes, extra maneuvers, coordinating the battle. That's what the name implies, and if we've done a good job, when you read through your character's abilities, you think, yes, this is what I was imagining. I can't wait to do this. Fantasy. Just, it's got dragons and stuff. It's worth mentioning. While everyone basically already knows what fantasy means in this context, we do imagine it is a little more broadly than your average classical medieval fantasy. We do imagine it a little more broadly than your average classical medieval fantasy. We like that stuff. Vastloria is our medieval European fantasy analog with knights on horseback and wizards in towers, but we also like high fantasy urban intrigue, and so we're developing Capital, the city of the great game, the greatest city in this or any age. Vastloria is mostly humans and elves and orcs and dwarves, but Capital has dozens, hundreds of different ancestries in it. Looking back at movies like Star Wars and the work of artists like Chris Foss, that 70s stuff now seems explicitly fantastical. There's nothing scientific or even plausible about a lightsaber or a John Berkey spaceship, but damn, they look cool. So our setting includes the Timescape, our multiverse, of which the world of Orden containing Capital and Vestiloria is only one part. The Timescape is more explicitly space fantasy. These core rules mostly cover the classic fantasy stuff. But we think Capital and the Timescape will help us deliver a game where more people can see their fantasy in our worlds. For us, fantasy includes magic, like wizards casting spells, and psionics, the natural and focused ability some creatures have to manipulate and warp reality with their minds. You know, telekinesis and telepathy, Jean Grey style. If you're coming from D20 fantasy, we know that many folks are coming to this game having only experienced D20 fantasy RPGs. This section details a few key distinctions between this game and typical D20 fantasy that you'll notice right away. These aren't the only distinctions, but they're the most obvious. Character options are different. We strongly recommend you start exploring Drawsteel by looking through the character creation section before you decide what you want to play. You can't just assume the Conduit is basically a cleric. In some ways, it is, but in other ways, it's quite different. You might have some cool character archetype you would love to play in D20 fantasy, but you're dying to see how that might work, and you're just dying to see how that might work in Drawsteel. But you'll have a lot more fun if you start by browsing the Ancestries and Classes section and getting inspired. Once you know a bit about how the game works, you'll have a better handle on how to build your favorite character the Drawsteel way. Smaller bonuses and penalties. Drawsteel is built around the roll of 2 10-sided dice to produce 3 possible outcomes. Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3. On the surface, this might not seem that different from rolling a 20-sided die and having 2 outcomes, success or failure, but we've run the math. A lot. A bonus of +1 or penalty of -2 is significant in Drawsteel, much more so than in an atypical D20 fantasy game. That means you should feel pretty good attempting most power rolls, the rolls you make to determine success both in and out of combat, if you have a decent characteristic bonus to add to those rolls. And if you have a specific skill that applies to a power roll made as a test outside of combat, you'll do even better. Little map here. Abilities automatically deal damage. When you use an ability, one of the unique combat features that defines your character, you can still have a bad turn. A Tier 1 outcome with minimal damage and effects is the worst outcome you can obtain with an ability. It's not awesome, but you're still always making progress. The question is, who's making progress faster, you or the monsters? Since there's no I miss, who's next, in this game, fights typically last 3 or fewer rounds. A fight that lasts 5 rounds is a long fight because everyone's always doing damage. You don't need to rest all the time. Most D20 fantasy games are games of attrition. Your spell slots and other features dwindle as the adventuring day goes on. In Drawsteel, you need to rest to regain your stamina and recoveries, the stats that determine how robust you are in combat. But all characters earn the capability to use their magic and other awesome abilities as they adventure, encouraging you to press on heroically. Our game has a lot of skills. Your character can make use of a long list of skills, but we don't expect you to memorize that list. We get into why the tests chapter features so many skills, but the short version is that we think having a lot of skills allows you to create more distinct and specialized heroes, which supports the sort of gameplay we want to see in Drawsteel. The skills in the game aren't tied to characteristics. If you're trying to lose someone in a crowd, you can use Presence, the characteristic that represents your character's force of personality, to try and hide. Why not? We won't be able to point out every difference. Beyond what's noted here, don't assume that these rules work like any D20 fantasy game you've played. We don't have the space to point out every exception, so if you're in doubt about how something works, put D20 fantasy out of your mind and read our rules without those assumptions. You'll find that things make better sense. If you're still confused, stop by the MCDM Discord and ask. We've got tons of awesome community members ready to help. We don't expect you to do everything to the letter. This is actually one thing Drawsteel Draw Stool. This is actually one thing Draw Steel does have in common with D20 Fantasy. This is a big book of rules. Don't stress if you need to look something up or make a ruling about an edge case on the fly. If everyone's having fun, you're doing it right. The Glossary Index. The following rules and game terms are fully defined and expanded upon in this book. This glossary is provided to give you a definition at a glance and make your life easier as a player or director. The page numbers after each glossary entry tell you where you can read more about the subject. I'm not going to read these, because we'll read about them later. Hey, that's us. The basics. The flow of playing Draw Steel is like playing any other tabletop role-playing game with a director, also called a game master or GM in other games. Play is a conversation between the director and the heroes that describes the story. The director sets the scene, describing the important elements of the environment that the heroes would notice. The director: Willie, you stand in the doorway of the top level of the ruined Necromancer's Tower. The air is stale and reeks of death. A pale full moon shines through a broken ceiling, illuminating 6 sarcophagi upon a raised dais, each with a lid carved in the likeness of a devil. Broken flasks, beakers, and other laboratory glass covers the floor. After the director sets the scene, each player describes how their character interacts with the area. The director then describes how the environment and any creature in it respond to the hero's actions. Alyssa, playing Jorn, a tactician: I'm going to hang out at the back of the group with my warhammer drawn. I want to be ready in case any of those skeletons we snuck by in the lower levels make their way up the stairs. Matt, playing Lynn, a talent: Lynn uses her minor telekinesis ability to sweep up the glass on the floor and form a path free of glass that goes from door to the dais. James, playing Corvo, a shadow: I'll light a torch as I step into the room. Is there anything new we can see now? Director: With the glass cleared away and brighter light glowing in the room, you can see that the floor is covered in faded sigils. At some point, a player will have their hero attempt a task that has a risk of failing in a way that is narratively interesting. In such cases, the director calls for some dice to be rolled. Don't worry, the rules outline when and how to do this. Grace, playing Val. Why are so many characters? Before anyone steps on them, I want to examine the symbols and figure out what they mean. Okay, well, for that, I need you to take an easy reason test. Grace rolls. I got a 12. What do I know? You can tell these old sigils are part of a necromancy spell that has been woven into the stone floor. Also, Jorn can hear something coming up the steps. It's the clicking and clacking of bone on stone. Let's make a decision here, folks. We got boneheads coming. I don't remember. What was Matt's voice? Lynn has had enough of this dilly-dallying. She moves to the dais and ushers everyone inside the room so we can shut and barricade the door. Uh-oh. Before anyone else can move, Lynn's foot connects with one of the sigils. A burst of red lightning cracks from the place where her foot touched the floor, running to the walls and up to the ceiling. Right. Necromancy. Yeah, I should have warned you. The whole tower starts to sway as the sarcophagus lids crash to the floor and clawed undead hands emerge from within. 6 decaying devils, each tattooed with glowing green runes, rise. They're eager for violence. I think we found the rotting lords of hell. Draw Steel! Exclamation point. When combat starts, it's time to use a square gridded map and miniatures to represent the position of the heroes relative to their enemies and the environment. The rules become a little more granular during combat to keep things interesting and fair. But the idea that the game is a conversation between the director and the other players remains the same. Characteristics. Each creature in the game has 5 characteristics that represent their physical and mental prowess. Might, represented by M in abilities and other features, represents strength and brawn. A creature's capability to break down doors, swing an axe, stand up during an earthquake, or hurl an ally across a chasm is determined by might. Agility represents coordination and nimbleness. A creature's capacity to backflip out of danger, shoot a crossbow, dodge an explosion, or pluck keys from a guard's belt is determined by agility. Reason represents a logical mind and education. A creature's capacity to solve a puzzle that unlocks a door, recall lore about necromancy. Decipher a coded message, or blast a foe with psionic powers determined by reason. Intuition represents instincts and experience, a creature's capability to recognize a faint sound as the approach of a distant rider, quickly read the tell of a bluffing gambler, calm a rearing horse, or track a monster across the tundra is determined by intuition. Presence represents force of personality, a creature's capacity to lie to a judge, convince a crowd to join a revolution, impress a queen at a royal banquet, or cast a magic spell by singing a song is determined by presence. Each characteristic has a score that runs from -5 to 5. The higher the score, the more impact a creature has with that characteristic. A baby bunny rabbit would have a might score of -5, while an ancient dragon would have a might score of 5. The average human has a score of 0 in all their characteristics. Characteristic scores are added to power rolls, the dice rolls you make whenever your character attempts a task with an uncertain outcome. This game uses 10-sided dice, also called d10s. Each player, including the director, should have 2 of these. Some 10-sided dice are numbered 0 to 9, while others are numbered 1 to 10. In the case of the former, a 0 counts as 10. The game also makes occasional use of 6-sided dice, called d6s, so it's helpful if each player has 1 or 2 of these as well. On rare occasions, the rules ask a player to roll 1 or more 3-sided dice, also called d3s. If you don't have a d3, you can roll a 6-sided die instead, treating a roll of 1 to 2 as a 1, a roll of 3 to 4 as a 2, and a roll of 5 to 6 as a 3. Some tables in the game call for a d100 roll. To roll a d100, grab 2 10-sided dice, decide which die represents the tens digit, with the other die representing the ones digit. For instance, if you roll a 5 for the tens digit and a 3 for the ones digit, the number rolled is a 53. Some 10-sided dice are numbered 0 to 9, while others are numbered 1 to 10. For the latter type of dice, a 10 counts as a 0 for the purpose of rolling a d100. For instance, if a 10 is rolled for the tens digit and a 0 is rolled for the ones digit, the number rolled is 09, or 9. If both dice rolled show a 0 or 10, then the number rolled is 100. Whenever a hero or other creature in a game attempts a task with an uncertain outcome, such as attacking a foe, sneaking by a guard patrol without being seen, or persuading a queen to provide military aid, the creature makes a power roll to determine the outcome of their actions. Types of power rolls. The game uses 2 types of power rolls. An ability roll is used when you use certain abilities to determine their impact. For instance, if a Fury uses their Brutal Slam ability to strike an enemy, their ability roll determines how much damage the enemy takes and how far back the enemy is pushed. See abilities for more information. A test is a power roll you make outside of using your abilities to affect or interact with the world around you. A tactician might not have an ability that lets them climb up the face of a cliff, so climbing is an activity they can attempt with a test. An elementalist doesn't have an ability that lets them automatically intimidate a cultist into backing down from a fight, but they can make a test if they want to try. Sapient creatures. All creatures in the game are sentient, capable of sensing and reacting to the world around them. But only some creatures are sapient, possessed of advanced intellect and consciousness. Being sapient has nothing to do with a creature's reason score, but is determined solely by whether a creature is capable of human-like levels of thought and emotion. The director decides whether creatures are sapient for the purpose of being affected by abilities and features that affect only sapient or non-sapient creatures. Making a power roll. When you make a power roll, you roll two 10-sided dice, usually noted as 2d20 in the rules, and add one of your characteristics. The characteristic you add depends on the kind of roll you're making as outlined in abilities and tests. Power roll outcomes. The total of a power roll determines your outcome tier. 3 levels that determine how successful your power roll is. If your power roll total is 11 or lower, it is a tier 1 outcome. This is the worst outcome a power roll can have. If you're using an ability, a tier 1 outcome means you still do something, but the impact of what you do is minimal. With this outcome, a strike ability might deal a little bit of damage and not do much else. For a test, a tier 1 outcome might mean you fail at what you set out to do, and you might also incur a negative consequence. Tier 2. If your power roll total is 12 to 16, it is a tier 2 outcome. This is the average outcome of many power rolls, especially for heroes who are first level. When using an ability, a tier 2 outcome means that what you do has a moderate impact. With this outcome, a strike ability deals a decent amount of damage and has an effect that briefly helps allies or hinders enemies. For a test, a tier 2 outcome means you might succeed at what you set out to do, though depending on the difficulty, success might have a cost. Tier 3. If your power roll total is 17 or higher, it is a tier 3 outcome. This is the best outcome a power roll can have. When using an ability, a tier 3 outcome means you deliver the maximum impact possible. With this outcome, a strike ability deals a lot of damage and has a powerful or lasting effect on enemies or allies. For a test, a tier 3 outcome means you succeed at what you set out to do. If the test has an easy difficulty, you also get something extra in addition to your success. The specific outcome of any power roll is determined by the effect or ability that requires the roll, or the rules for test C abilities, or the rules for test C tests. Downgrade a power roll. Whenever you make a power roll, you can downgrade it to select the outcome of its lower tier. For instance, if an ability has a tier 3 outcome that lets you impose the restrained condition on a creature, but the tier 2 outcome for that ability lets you impose the slowed condition, you can use the tier 2 outcome if you would rather have the creature slowed than restrained. If you downgrade a critical hit, you still get the extra action benefit of the critical hit. Natural roll. The total of your power roll before your characteristic or any other modifiers are added is called the natural roll. The rules often refer to this as rolling a natural X, where X is the total of the roll. For example, if you get a 20 on a power roll before adding your characteristic, this is often called rolling a natural 20. When you roll a natural 19 or 20 on a power roll, it is always a tier 3 result regardless of any modifiers, and on certain types of power rolls, this is a critical hit. Edges and Banes. An archer standing on a castle wall fires down into a throng of enemies, hitting the mark each time thanks to their high ground. A drunken bandit struggles to land blows on sober opponents as alcohol clouds their senses. Under certain circumstances, you need more than just a characteristic to represent the advantages and disadvantages that heroes, their enemies, and their allies might have. Edge. An edge represents a situational advantage a hero or an enemy has when making a power roll. For example, a standing hero who makes a melee strike against a prone creature gains an edge on the power roll for their strike. A pair of magic gloves that makes your hand sticky might grant you an edge when making a power roll to climb walls. When you make a power roll with an edge, you gain a +2 bonus to the roll. If you make a power roll with 2 or more edges, you have a double edge. With a double edge, you don't add anything to the power roll, but the outcome of the roll automatically improves 1 tier to a maximum of tier 3. Bane. A Bane represents a situational disadvantage a hero or an enemy has when making a power roll. For example, if you make a strike while prone, the power roll for the strike takes a Bane. A rainstorm might give you a bane on a power roll made to climb an outdoor wall because the weather makes the stone surface extra slick. When you make a power roll with a bane, you take a -2 penalty to the roll. If you make a power roll with 2 or more banes, you have a double bane. With a double bane, you don't subtract anything from the power roll, but the outcome of the roll automatically decreases 1 tier to a minimum of tier 1. Rolling with edges and banes. Under certain circumstances, you might have 1 or more edges and banes on the same roll. For instance, you might take a bane when weakened by poison, even as you gain an edge for striking a prone creature. In general, edges and banes cancel each other out, resolving as follows. If you have an edge and a bane, or if you have a double edge and a double bane, the roll is made as usual without any edges or banes. If you have a double edge and just 1 bane, the roll is made with 1 edge, regardless of how many individual edges contribute to the double edge. If you have a double bane and just 1 edge, the roll is made with 1 bane, regardless of how many individual banes contribute to the double bane. When to use edges and banes. The rules tell you when to modify the roll with an edge or a bane. The director can also modify rolls with edges and banes as a response to narrative or environmental circumstances. For instance, no rule specifically says that rain imposes a bane on power rolls made to climb a stone wall, but it makes sense that rainy conditions should make climbing that wall harder, so a director should absolutely do so. Why cap? We capped edges and banes at a maximum of 2, each for several reasons, including thinking about the narrative of those penalties. Every little advantage or disadvantage in a heroic story has diminishing returns, acknowledging that a creature can benefit or be hindered by short-term circumstances only so much. For example, a character who is prone and weakened by poison already finds it difficult to attack, so that becoming restrained by a net can't really make it harder. We also liked capping edges and banes at 2 because it keeps play quick. It's nice to not need to count beyond 2 positive or negative circumstances in a battle with lots of effects flying around. Bonuses and penalties. While edges and banes cover most circumstantial effects that can have an impact on a power roll, a few rules add numeric bonuses or penalties to power rolls. Bonus and penalty values are specified in the rules that impose them and are calculated independently of edges and banes, and before edges and banes are factored into a power roll. There is no limit to the number of bonuses or penalties that can apply to a power roll, and bonuses and penalties always add together. Though it might sound as if the math with bonuses and penalties can get confusing, fear not. Bonuses and penalties are rare, except in the case of skills which appear on your character sheet. Automatic tier outcomes. Effects in the game sometimes allow a creature to obtain an automatic tier 1, 2, or 3 outcome on a power roll. Such effects supersede any edges, banes, bonuses, or penalties that might affect the roll. If you obtain an automatic tier outcome, and the power roll would have an additional effect if you get a specific roll, such as scoring a critical hit in combat, you can still make the roll to determine if you obtain the additional effect in addition to the automatic outcome. What a sentence. If you are under multiple effects that each grant you a different automatic outcome, those effects cancel each other out and all automatic outcomes are ignored. If multiple effects grant you the same automatic outcome, you obtain that outcome. Hero tokens. In all great heroic stories, luck favors the protagonists, giving them that little bit of extra fortune they need to win the day. In these stories, fate is often on the side of the righteous. To represent that tiny bit of karma, players have access to hero tokens, a special resource that they can rely on when all else fails. Hero tokens are a group resource that is tracked by the players and kept in a pool accessible to all their characters. Hero tokens can be tracked using poker chips, stones, or other markers, or can be tallied numerically on a piece of paper or written off to the side in a virtual tabletop. Earning hero tokens. At the start of a new game session, the heroes have a number of hero tokens equal to the number of heroes in the party. Heroes can earn more tokens through play by taking big risks to save others. A hero who leaps off a cliff to reach the bottom and aid a friend, who crosses a burning bridge to save a stray cat, or who wagers their most prized treasure as part of a negotiation to get shelter for a group of refugees might earn a hero token for the group. The director has the final say regarding which heroic acts earn hero tokens. Players can also be awarded hero tokens as part of a test's outcome when they succeed on a test with a reward. Spending hero tokens. Whenever hero tokens are available, you can spend them in the following ways. You can spend a hero token to gain 2 surges, allowing you to increase the damage or potency of an ability. You can spend a hero token when you fail a saving throw, letting you succeed on the save instead. If you can spend a hero token to reroll a test. You must use the new roll. You can spend 2 hero tokens on your turn, or when you take damage, no action required, to regain stamina equal to your recovery value before taking the damage. You can use only 1 hero token benefit per turn or per test, unless the director decides otherwise. Unused hero tokens disappear at the end of a session. Optional rule: hero tokens don't reset. A director can decide that hero tokens don't refresh at the start of each session and don't disappear at the end of one. This style of play serves many groups who play short sessions consisting of only 2 or 3 hours of play, since it makes hero tokens less abundant and reliable. To use this option, one of the players must note the number of hero tokens available at the end of each session, so everyone remembers how many are available the next time you play. The director should take particular care to remember to award hero tokens for heroic behavior, since the heroes won't get any automatically. Game of Exceptions. This game has a fair number of rules, but it also has plenty of character options, specialized equipment, and other game elements that let you break those rules. This is on purpose. Breaking the rules allows heroes to feel special and make their foes feel extra dangerous. If you're not sure what to do when 2 rules come into conflict with each other, remember that a specific exception always beats a more general rule. The director has the final say in how rules are adjudicated. Always round down. Sometimes the rules tell you to divide a number in half. Whenever you divide an odd number in half and it results in a decimal, round the result down to the nearest whole number. For instance, if a tactician takes 7 damage and uses the parry ability in response, a triggered action that halves the damage, then the damage is reduced to 3. Creatures and objects. Drawsteel uses the term creature and object when referring to the targets of abilities and other effects. Creatures are living or unliving beings such as animals, elves, humans, dragons, giants, zombies, and Valak. Objects are inanimate matter such as walls, carriages, cups, swords, ropes, coins, paintings, columns, and buildings. When a creature dies, their body becomes an object and is affected by abilities and other effects as an object, not a creature. For example, an elementalist can't use their return to formlessness ability to set an enemy cult leader on fire. But if that leader dies, the elementalist can immolate their body to prevent them from being raised as a powerful undead by the temple's magic. Unattended objects. The game sometimes refers to unattended objects, which are objects that aren't held, worn, or controlled by a creature. Whenever an ability or other effect targets objects, it affects only unattended objects unless the director determines otherwise. Among other things, this prevents the abilities from being used to damage a foe's armor, weapons, clothing, treasures, and so forth, while those objects are worn or held. Supernatural or mundane. The word supernatural is used to describe abilities, creatures, objects, and effects that are magic or psionic in nature. The word mundane is used to describe abilities, creatures, objects, and effects that aren't magic or psionic. PCs and NPCs. Two types of characters inhabit the world of the game. The player characters, also called PCs or heroes, who are created and controlled by the players, and non-player characters, NPCs, created and controlled by the director. NPCs can include any of the game's monsters, but when the rules refer to NPCs, they generally do so in the context of interacting with them outside of combat. Building a heroic narrative. The game takes place in a series of scenes, with the heroes as the main characters. An adventure is a collection of scenes that make up a story, with a beginning, middle, and end, and a campaign is a collection of adventures that tell the entire epic tale of a group of heroes. You can think of each adventure as a movie and a saga of films, a book and a series of novels, or a season of a television show. While many heroes have their stories told over the course of a campaign, some wrap up their careers in a single adventure that takes place in one game session, called a one-shot. You can think of a one-shot as a great standalone novella, or movie. This game is built so that each adventure you play and each battle you fight gets more exciting as it goes on. In Fantastic Tales, the heroes and their foes both grow in power over the course of an adventure. But it isn't time alone that grows a hero's capabilities, rather it's the adrenaline that comes from battle, the danger of the hero's profession, and the pressure to save the world, or at least some small part of it, that pushes a character to do the impossible. Each small act of heroism gives a hero the confidence and bravery to perform legendary feats against all odds. The things a hero can achieve at the end of the story are far more daring and impactful than what they do at the start, and the final showdown against a villain's forces is more deadly and desperate than the first. The rules of the game help build a heroic narrative. In this same fashion, making use of the four most important mechanics for building heroic narratives: victories, experience, heroic resources, and recoveries. Heroic. I have trouble saying that today. Victories measure your hero's increasing power over the course of an adventure as they overcome battle and other challenges. At the start of an adventure, your hero has 0 victories. Victories for combat. Each time your hero survives a combat encounter in which the party's objectives are achieved, you earn 1 victory. The director can decide that a trivially easy encounter doesn't earn the heroes a victory and can award additional victories for particularly challenging encounters. Victories for non-combat challenges. When your hero successfully overcomes a big challenge that doesn't involve combat, the director can award you 1 victory. Such challenges can include things such as a particularly complicated and deadly trap, a negotiation, a montage test, a complicated puzzle, or the execution of a clever idea that avoids a battle. Especially difficult challenges might earn you more than 1 victory. Victories reset. When you finish a respite, your victories are converted into experience. Bags of rats ain't heroic. Some players might think that quickly starting a fight with some bar patrons or carrying around a bag of rats is a good way to gather up those sweet victories and heroic resources. Those strategies don't work. The rules of the game exist to help you tell a cool, heroic fantasy story, not so you can try to be clever and exploit them by harming innocent rats to win. In order to generate victories and heroic resources, you must face and overcome challenges worthy of a hero. Experience. Victories temporarily increase a hero's power during an adventure, but experience, abbreviated XP, permanently improves their capabilities. Each time you finish a respite, you gain XP equal to your victories, and your victories reset to 0. In other words, your victories are converted to XP when you finish a respite. For more information on how XP increases your hero's power, see your heroic advancement in making a hero. Heroic resources. Your hero has a heroic resource determined by your class and which you manage during play. Earning your heroic resources can increase your hero's power, and you spend your heroic resources to activate your most powerful abilities. Your hero's class description has more information about how to use your heroic resource. Recoveries. Recoveries represent the number of times your hero can take a breather and keep fighting. Spending recoveries lets you regain stamina, the measure of any creature's physical vitality and capacity to shrug off or avoid damage. Running out of recoveries means your hero has reached their uttermost limit. When you spend a recovery, you regain stamina equal to your recovery value, which is 1/3 your stamina maximum. You can spend your recoveries with a special maneuver, or you might do so with a little supernatural help from a conduit, a boost of adrenaline from an allied tactician, or inspiration from your party's troubadour. Spending recoveries. During combat encounters and similarly dangerous situations when time is tracked in rounds, you can use the catch breath maneuver to regain stamina. Some heroes have abilities that allow them or their heroes to spend more recoveries without using the catch breath maneuver. Outside of combat and other dangerous situations, you can spend recoveries freely. Regaining recoveries. You regain all lost recoveries when you finish a respite. Respite. A respite is a focused period of time and recuperation that allows heroes to regain stamina and recoveries. During a respite, you must spend 24 hours uninterrupted and doing nothing but sleeping, eating, dressing your wounds, and recuperating. You can also undertake one respite activity, such as making a project roll. After 24 hours, your respite ends. When you finish a respite, you regain all your recoveries and stamina, and your victories convert to experience. You can take as many respites as you like in a row to keep accomplishing respite activities. Just keep in mind that while you're resting, your enemies are still scheming and carrying out their dastardly plans. It is best to take a respite in a safe place where you aren't in a hostile environment or at risk of being attacked. If your respite is interrupted by enemies attacking, an earth tremor, swarms of biting insects, and similarly serious distractions, the respite ends early and you don't gain the benefits for finishing it. The standard 8 or so hours of sleep one gets at night doesn't count as a respite. The rules assume that all heroes take the time to sleep, eat, and take care of all the other functions necessary for life, even if they aren't engaged in a respite. Echelons of play. The core gameplay experience of Drawsteel takes place over 10 levels of play. At first level, player characters are already known as heroes and have the power to save their local village. By the time the characters are 10th level, people all over the world, maybe even across worlds, know the names of their saviors. Since the game encompasses power levels from hometown heroes to demigods, the core experience has been divided into 4 different echelons. Each echelon determines the types of threats the heroes can take on, the stakes of their stories, and the rewards they receive at the various levels of play. First echelon. The first echelon of play details the stories of characters of 1st to 3rd level. At this echelon, the characters are local heroes. They save lost caravans, besieged villages, and overlooked neighborhoods within cities. Characters battle bands of mortal humanoids, dwarves, elves, goblins, humans, kobolds, orcs, and more. They can also face off against the occasional larger monstrous threat, such as a bread battle, ogre, or chimera. Such creatures can threaten a small community, but rarely have plans for world domination or the destruction of the timescape. However, any of these adversaries might work for or be manipulated by stronger threats as a foreshadowing of what awaits the heroes at higher echelons. The second echelon of play covers 4th to 6th level. At this echelon, the heroes are now known throughout the wider region they serve. In Vastloria, this means the characters might save and be celebrated by an entire country. In Capital, their reputation and work could encompass several different neighborhoods of the enormous city. Heroes of the Timescape might be known for saving a planet. Heroes in this echelon battle humanoids of great supernatural power, such as draconians, devils, and hobgoblins. They face bosses possessed of cunning and ambition, as great as their terrible influence, such as Medusas and Overminds. Heroes at this level also face the humanoid threats of earlier levels, but those foes are villainous counterparts of equal power rather than bands of ruffians or marauding armies. Third echelon. The third echelon of play covers 7th to 9th level. At this echelon, the heroes are saving and are known throughout the setting where they serve. The heroes are saving and are known throughout the setting where they serve. Most folks in Vastloria, Capital, or across the larger timescape know of the heroes and are grateful for their efforts, saving the continent, the entire city, or multiple worlds, respectively. Foes at this echelon include beings of great power, such as giants, vampires, and Valak. The fourth echelon of play explores the stories of characters at 10th level. It might even go beyond in future products. At this echelon, heroes are saving the entire timescape from threats such as liches? Powerful dragons, and overlords like Ajax, the Invincible. Orden and the Timescape. A new game demands new worlds. Welcome to the Timescape, a collection of worlds spanning high fantasy, dark fantasy, even space fantasy. Our tour begins on the world of Orden, the Prime Manifold, where humans, elves, dwarves, and orcs share a world with dragons, goblins, kobolds, and dozens of other speaking peoples. but human civilization and politics dominate here. Orden contains 8 major regions, the largest of which is Vesloria. Vesloria, a forested medieval feudal land. Here's Orden. Vesloria, down here. Vesloria is peppered with few cities, mostly just towns and villages. While there will someday be nations here with proper borders, as of now, in the age of chaos, those nations are merely geographic areas with names people use to distinguish lands that share similar terrain and subcultures. Aindrim, the land of hills and farms. Corwell, with its knights and castles. The marshlands of Tull, where witches and wise women battle hags and swamp monsters. The thick forests of Pharaoh, with its band of archers, and the horselands of Grade, home to the best cavalry in Orden. Mountainous northeastern Vesloria is home to the small earldoms of Sednia, Ulveria, and Sarda, and the earldom of Roll, containing the land of Glower, once ruled by a deathless count. Scattered across it all, Vesloria boasts the densest collection of elf-haunted woads in Orden. All regions have woads, but Vesloria's northern border is the Great Woad, where the world still works as it did before humans arrived. The Great Woad. Within the woads, time misbehaves. Cause and effect are only distant cousins, as all lands were before Ord placed the dwarves in the world, imposing the law of time on Orden. Children's tales of villagers wandering into a woad and emerging unchanged 100 years later are based on real events. When pressed on how this works, the elves look baffled. How does what work? Omen's land. Omend. Western Vesloria, including most of Aindrim and Corwell, and parts of Grayed, was until recently ruled by good King Ormond. His draconian knights, the Dragon Phalanx, protected the weak from the strong, dispensing justice. Omen's rule lasted 35 years, and in his life this area was known as Omen's Land. Under Omen's rule, order thrived. Roads were safe. People could even walk into the woods unafraid of meeting anything more threatening than a nymph or a conversational manticore. Omend died 15 years ago, and so died the rule of law. Now the forest claims the towns and roads once held safe. The woods are dangerous. Their only law, tooth and claw. Omend was betrayed, and his castle fell to Ajax the Invincible, now called the Iron Saint. His wizard Mortem unlocked the secret of the ancient sky elf flying cities, and raised the Chrysopolis, Ajax's city fortress in the sky. It was Mortem who used the secrets of the Sinleroy body banks. I thought it was a name, granting immortality to those nobles who voluntarily submit to Ajax. Those same body banks produce Ajax's war dogs, his brutal patchwork soldiers who owe their new lives to the Iron Saint and fight for him fanatically. Ajax abolished all faiths and temples. He executed the dukes who organized and united the barons, leaving the far-flung baronies to try and hold human civilization together. Once, these people were loose allies. There was trade between humans, elves, dwarves, and orcs. Now, there is only suspicion. The high elves of the fallen city pay tribute with ancient artifacts they plunder from the fallen celestial city of Uranus. The Woad elves of the Orchid Court, lacking any centralized government or cities, refuse to bow to Ajax. The dwarves of Calavar pay tribute in prisoners they abduct from those foolish enough to travel the roads unescorted. These prisoners serve Ajax as forced labor or are fed into the body banks. Brooding under the mountains in their fabled hanging city, the stone dwarves do not like this deal with the Overlord, but lack the power or the will to rebel. The Hawklords of the High Eyries, once remote and proud, almost mythical to the people below, made their own pact with Ajax to avoid extermination. They now serve as his elite counterinsurgent force. Mounted on their giant hawks, they project Ajax's power, enforce his law, and extend his influence into every corner of the wilderness. Their mastery of the air means any revolt or rebellion is quickly seen and crushed. The dragon phalanx is broken. Ajax placed a high bounty on its warriors' heads. Some folk still see I keep seeing Omened and think it's Ormond. Anyways. Some folk still see Omen's knights as symbols of justice, heroes of a lost age before might made right. But in every town, every village, there are always desperate people willing to collect the bounty, summoning the Hawk Lords to pluck any dragon knight foolish enough to travel without a disguise away to the Chrysopolis. Isolated and outnumbered, the human baronies desperately fight a losing battle against the encroaching wilderness. Order dies. Chaos thrives. Capital. The greatest city in this or any age. City of the Great Game. Located west across the Bale Sea from Vesloria, on the eastern coast of Rioja, or Rioja? Whatever. Capital is not only the largest city in Orden, it's the largest city there has ever been. Larger than the fabled steel dwarf capital of Kalas Valiar. Larger even than Alloy, the city at the center of the timescape. Capital is the exception to many rules. Excuse me? Here's Capital. It's wild. It's a wild setting. Where on this map is Alloy? City of the center of the timescape. Here. Capital is bigger. This little star thing looks bigger than this, but whatever. I'll trust the words. It is a city of playwrights and opera, of spies and sorcery, famed throughout the world as a city of high magic, where flying tapestries act as taxis. The reality of living in Capital is somewhat more mundane. Only the very wealthy can afford such luxuries. The great houses, ancient, noble families, reluctantly share power with the upstart guilds, who think vast wealth entitles them to rule. The great houses are very proud of their city. They believe anyone from anywhere should be able to come to Capital and earn a living, own property, expect justice. They just don't think anyone else should be able to rule. The guilds, by contrast, are more egalitarian, more democratic, and largely obsessed with accruing wealth, city be damned. 3 of them recently used their obscene wealth to buy great house status, and now play the great game with the best of them. The great game is espionage, and House Alvaro are the best players in the world. Led by Duke Prospero, House Alvaro sponsor the Imperial University, the greatest center of learning in the world. Nobles from across Orden, including Vanagar, send their children to learn diplomacy and statecraft at the university. While the greatest spies in the world are all graduates of the Actian School. Actian School, one of the colleges in the university, which has historically doubled as the Prince's intelligence agency. House Verona run the city's navy, the largest military organization of any kind in Orden. Their engineers perfected the secret of black powder and guard it jealously. The Imperial Navy's cannons protect trade across Orden, placing Capital at the center of international affairs. Verona's Far Mariners, aka the Marines, are the closest thing Capital has to a city-wide law enforcement organization. Each great house is expected to police its own district. Duke Marco Verona sponsors the Imperial War College, also known as the Academy, a prestigious institution rivaling any college of the Imperial University. The Academy boasts graduates among all the noble families in Orden. This widespread allegiance creates a vast informal network in the city referred to cynically as the Old Class Ring that gives Verona access to intelligence other factions can only dream of. House Navarre, oldest of the great houses, enforces the church's law, which they call justice. Led by His Grace Orsino Duke Navarre, Archbishop of the most powerful church in the city, the Church of Saint Isabella the Pitiless, House Navarre consolidates a vast network of different churches and orders of knights across the region under one elaborate system of patronage. Arguably the most powerful great house, House Valletta, controls the Arbitros Fiat, the tax collectors. Valletta is led by the Duchess Lenore, who, in mourning for her assassinated husband Maximo, opened the Codex Mortis and spoke the ritual which should have returned her love to life. Instead, she brought about the Lilac Night, which transformed every mortal in her district, including herself, into deathless revenants. Nice work. Now, the Duchess Lenore is an immortal vampire queen, a dead lady ruling over a dead city. And they're just cool with like having this a part of town. Anyways, after the Lilac Night, when the prince was no longer able to rely on House Valletta to deliver the taxes they collected, Lady Charome coordinated with two other guilds to buy great house status for themselves. Lady Charome runs the city's Assayers Guild, the Fulcrum. The guild controls the Trade Integrity Board, which sets lending rates and leads trade negotiations between capital and other governments in Orden. It was the Fulcrum that convinced the prince to switch the city to paper money. As a result, Capital is the first and only city to have a robust monetary policy. The broadsheets, formerly known as the Font, publish the thrice daily news sheets everyone in the city reads. Guildmaster Inan al-Adwiya uses a vast network of young people called the Paper Feathers to deliver and sell the broadsheets throughout the city. Lady al-Adwiya knows almost everything happening anywhere in the city. The Farriers Guild, popularly known as the Rasp, control transport throughout the city, led by Lord Cashmere, a Heliox from Alloy, who introduced the flying tapestries that metaphorically shrank capital, allowing the rich and powerful to cross the 13-mile-wide city in just a few minutes. He created the Kites, couriers famous for getting a message anywhere in capital in only a few hours. Cashimere's monopoly on importing flying tapestries from Alloy gives him enormous power, and he is not shy about seeking more. 3 years ago, the Prince of Capital died, leaving no heir or even a likely candidate. He was a young man, only 41, but the events surrounding his death are shrouded in mystery and inaccurate accounts. Was he murdered like a commoner, or assassinated by a political rival? Evidence is scant, rumor substitutes as fact. Now, the great game takes on a new meaning, as the 4 great houses and 3 newly ascendant guilds jockey for position, each wanting to step into the power vacuum left by the dead prince. Everyone knows a war is coming, a war of succession. That means fighting on the street. Yep. But each player in the game would much prefer it if someone else made the first move. The myriad worlds of the timescape. Orden is only one world in the timescape. Each star in the sky is another, though this fact is not known to most people living on Orden. Old-fashioned people still use the archaic term plane to describe these worlds, while sages use geometric formula. Describing these worlds they call manifolds. They all mean the same thing. Higher worlds are more energetic, affording access to alien technologies. Great star freighters ply the space lanes, and knights wield psionically powered hard light blades, dueling against star pirates with hard light blasters. The lower worlds lack the energy necessary for such extraordinary technology to function, and so rely on magic to break the rules. On Axiom, the plane of uttermost law, the Memenek live on a world teeming with complex inorganic life. Unisol, the Universal Solar League, ensures and protects trade across the upper worlds, defending the Star Freighters from the Time Raiders and the infamous pirate band, the Star Slayers, on their legendary ship, the Krad, K-R-A-D. The K-R-A-D Fearless. Karanzoi Rapid Attack Dreadnought, the K-R-A-D Fearless. Meanwhile, on Proteus, the Sea of Eternal Change, the formless Proteans rebelled against the Sinleroy, who once ruled the plane of uttermost chaos, exiling the voiceless talkers to the world below. Now, masters of their world, the Proteans take to the stars in their living change ships, hurling their small fleet against the tyrannical, unquestioned might of Unisol. On Quintessence, the lowest of the upper worlds, Proteans and Memenek alike rub shoulders with devils, fire dwarves, even humans. In Quintessence's capital city of Alloy. The city at the center of the timescape, the free city of Alloy, also known as the city of brass, they're just calling it all sorts of stuff, is the gateway to the timescape. People traveling to or from the upper and lower worlds meet here to trade goods and information, free from the inflexible law of Unisol. Traveling downward from Quintessence, one arrives on Orden, the plane of gods and sorcery, highest of the lower worlds where magic rules. The gods, forbidden from interfering directly in a world with such a low energy state, rely on saints to enact their will. Technology from the upper worlds does not function down here unless powered by a strong psionic mind or the miracle mineral Iridas, also known as Prismacore. Almost co-terminal with Orden is its sister manifold, the world below. The Dark Under All, a plane of exiles ruled by Alai cloaked in stars silver, the Queen of Night, first of the three sisters below. The world below is a land of vast caves and sunless seas. There are no stars here, no sky, only endless caverns and warrens, some vast enough to hold entire cities like Or Mazar, city of the Black Star, from which the Queen of Night rules. The power of the world below wanes, while the power of Equinox waxes. A smaller parasitic manifold home to the Twilight Celestials and their servants, the Shadow Elves, Equinox, is ruled by Every Strike of Lightning, a lover betrayed, the Queen of Shadows, third of the three sisters below, who plots to bridge the sea between worlds and colonize Orden, making a new home for her people before their old world dies. A fierce, fairy tale, weird magic, jungle world of permanent twilight, also known as dusk. A fierce, fairy tale, weird magic, jungle world of permanent twilight, also known as dusk. Interesting. The last plane of law, the Seven Cities of Hell, is among the lowest of the lower planes, a land of devils, proud of their civilization. Each of the 7 cities is ruled by an archduke who schemes to ascend to the throne of hell. A world of bureaucratic law, the devil denizens of hell have little interest in the other planes. Life is so much more interesting down here. The 7 archdevils conspired together once, agreeing to create the Order of Desolation, also known as the Ill-Riggers, to extend their power into the timescape and defend hell from the horde of demons below. The demons of the Abyssal Waste, the lowest plane, claw and scramble over each other, competing for souls in this heat-blasted desert under a baleful, giant orange sun. Mindless collections of organs, claws, and teeth, demons collect souls until they reach sentience and gain identity and the blessing of memory. These demons will do anything to escape upwards out of the wasteland, lest they lose their collected souls, lose their identity, and fall into the mindless state called Lethe. At the center of the abyssal waste lies the Necropolitan Ruin, the last city, a city of the dead, ruled by Korsakef, once the infinite pharaoh of Kemhara, now the Ultralich. Korsakef intends to return to Orden and sit once again on his throne in the Heliopolis. Abyssal Wastes, Necropolitan Ruin, Seven Cities of Hell, the World Below, the Dark Under All Ormazar, Equinox, Dusk, the Woad Elves with Dusk, Orden, Capital's over here, Quintessence, Alloy, and then the different uppermost law, uttermost law, uttermost chaos. Got some space stations, star freighters. Lots of stuff. Setting design. Orden and the Timescape were both designed over the last 25 years to be an explicitly commercial setting. A product where you could find all the things everyone expects to find in a classic fantasy setting, with new takes on classic tropes and a little more why are things like this work done to ground everything and make things feel plausible. None of this makes Orden better than other settings, it just gives it character. Orden is not explicitly a high fantasy world, even though there are some pretty high fantasy things going on in it, because the average person has very little access to magic. The typical village might have a priest who knows some real prayers that close wounds or cure minor ailments, or an alchemist or a hedge wizard who can brew some potions or conjure minor spells, but that's the extent of it. The result is, though, Orden is a pre-industrial world with technology and societies akin to 13th century Europe. The quality of life of the people who live there is a lot closer to ours. They live about as long as we do, die from disease about as often as we do, and generally have diets similar to ours, though with vastly more basic and constricted options on their menus. In Capital, for instance, people use flying tapestries to get around the city quickly, desperately not calling it a flying carpet, but these are a luxury available only to the rich. The vast majority of Capital's citizens live a life basically the same as your average Londoner in Shakespeare's time. Less plague and fire, though. It's not clear to us looking in, but it doesn't seem as though Orden operates according to the real-world laws of physics, chemistry, and biology. People in the Middle Ages here on Earth didn't know about quarks or DNA, but they still knew everything was made of stuff, and everyone expected a child to more or less resemble their parents. Essentially, Orden works the way people living in any culture's medieval era believed the real world actually worked. Orden works the way people living in any culture's medieval era believed the real world actually worked. It's just a strange sentence to me. Because of the presence of magic, prayer, and psionics in the world, it's unlikely anything like science or an industrial age will ever come to Orden. Ultimately, while there are 10th level characters out there, these are exceedingly rare. Most people in Orden do not have class levels, only a few or first level anything. No one has ever tried to take a census of all the sensors, conduits, furies, and so forth, but if they did, they'd probably end up with a chart that looks a lot like Zipf's Law. Finally, most information about Orden in the Timescape is presented from the point of view of someone living in Orden. They can tell you what they think they know, but even learned historians do not agree, and new information constantly comes to light challenging the accepted academic wisdom. Just like, you get it. This lack of objective certainty not only makes it more fun for us to work on Orden, it makes it easier for you to make Orden yours. This comes at the price of certainty. Are the Dragon Phalanx really incorruptible? Well, a lot of people still say that, in spite of concrete evidence to the contrary. But we think it helps relieve some of the anxiety directors have when they want to run a game in Orden, but are afraid they don't know enough or everything. Not to worry, no one knows everything. P.S. We use the phrase Orden and the Timescape because Orden is, as it were, the star of the show. But Orden is very clearly only one world in the Timescape. It's like those astronomy maps hanging on the wall in your grade school science class that said Earth and the solar system. Like that map, any map of the timescape will be an artist's interpretation, not drawn to scale, never wholly accurate depending on what information you're looking for. The timescape in your game. We use the timescape and its medieval fantasy land Orden as the default setting presented in these books. Doing so makes it easier for us designers, makes it easier for us as designers to marry our design with real examples from a real imaginary fantasy world. We also think it's easier for you to take the names for places, languages, and gods and replace them with your own. We might reference some hero or villain, saint or god, whose name makes you think, well, I don't have that in my setting. If we do a good job, though, you might be inspired to say, but that makes me think. And being inspired is part of the fun. If you're the director, you can use as many or as few of the details of the timescape as you like. You might wish to create your own world within the timescape or use a setting you've created that exists outside of the official MCDM manifolds. You can use details from settings published by other companies. There are no rules when it comes to world building. Feel free to take what you like from this book and change the rest. For example, you might not care for our dwarves having literal stone skin. That's fine. You can make them fleshy, stout, bearded folk or mohawked, barrel-chested punk rockers or anything else you wish. As long as you're running a heroic fantasy game about fighting monsters, then the game's rules are still likely to serve your narrative, even if that narrative deviates from ours. If you're a player, ask your director about the setting where the game takes place, and discuss with them the sort of hero you want to create. Maybe you want to play a more traditional gruff and bearded dwarf rather than go all short and stony. An open dialogue and honest discussion with your director can lead to everyone getting what they want out of the game. While this book and Draw Steel Monsters are both chock full of character options and adventures and adventure ideas that could keep you playing Draw Steel for years, some folks want even more classes, ancestries, monsters, treasures, and encounters. You can find out what we're developing next, get a preview of that content, and read blog posts about the development of the game by joining the MCDM Patreon at mcdm.gg/Patreon. Chapter 2, Making a Hero. If you're not the director, then you create and play one of the main characters in the game's story, a hero. Your hero is a person motivated to fight forces of evil to protect the innocent, but each hero has their own personal reason for doing so. You don't have to be a pure beacon of good. Heroes have flaws and are complex, just like people in the real world, but your hero should be someone who isn't afraid to battle monsters for altruistic reasons. If you're only interested in playing a money-grubbing sellsword, you can achieve that with these rules, but you'll likely be happier playing another game. The hero you create will be role-played by you. Often, when referring to your hero, the rules use second-person pronouns, you/your, for shorthand, making a distinction between you and your hero only when that distinction is important. Your first session. Getting together with your friends to make characters can be a lot of fun. Many groups spend most of their first session talking about the campaign story, making heroes, and going over expectations for the game. It's a great way to kick off a long-term campaign. The director should make an agenda for a campaign's first session, often called Session 0. For the director's section, has all the information a director needs to help organize a successful first session, which can include any of the following events. The director and players talk about the safety tools they want to employ at the game table, whether physical or virtual, so that everyone has a good time and understands which topics should be avoided in the game's narrative and which should be embraced. For more information, check out the MCDM Tabletop Safety Toolkit, which includes advice for running a successful first session. The director discusses the campaign's world and the major story themes they want to introduce into the game. This often takes the form of a campaign pitch the director presents to the players. The director should tell the players if any options are limited or rare in their campaign. For example, some directors don't want psionics to appear in their game world, so they might decide that heroes can't be nulls or talents. Another campaign might be grounded in more typical medieval fantasy and not have any Memenek or Time Raiders, or those ancestries might be exceedingly rare. In the latter case, players should know that their Memenek or Time Raider heroes are likely to get a lot of questions from curious NPCs. The players get a chance to tell the director what they would like to experience in the campaign. This can include anything from "I'd love to play out some chase scenes" to "I want to explore themes of loss and grief." These wishes should be starting points for conversation. If not all players are comfortable with certain themes or content requested by other players, then Session 0 is a great time to discuss that and come to a consensus about what everyone wants out of the game. That should probably come first before what the director discusses. Anyways. Make heroes. Once everyone understands what the campaign is about, it's the perfect time to get into character creation. When a group of players makes heroes together, they can tie backstories together and strategize to build a tactically dominant party both in and out of combat. The director runs an encounter to kick off the campaign. If all the players have the time, it's totally worth it to get some play in during the first session. Even if it's just a quick brawl in a tavern with some cultists. Starting off with a little action lets you see what the game is all about and raises anticipation for the next session. Step-by-step hero making. Use the following step-by-step guide to create a hero. These steps are presented in what we believe is the best way to approach making your first hero for Draw Steel. That said, the order of the steps is still a suggestion, not a hard and fast rule. Many players like to build a hero from the backstory up, making ancestry and culture ideal first choices. However, some players like to start more in the present, choosing a career and class, the choices with the most potential impact on what your character can do in the game, and then going back and figuring out where their hero came from. There's no wrong way to do it. The sections below tell you where to look to learn about ancestries, classes, and other options. You'll want a character sheet to fill out while you make your hero. Each option you can choose for your hero at level 1 includes a parenthetical selection labeled Quick Build. Call it a parenthetical selection, but they put Quick Build in quotes. This is for players who want to build a character faster without reading through all the available options. By choosing the most straightforward and archetypal option for a hero. Let me try that. Each option you can choose for your hero at first level includes a parenthetical selection labeled Quick Build. This is for players who want to build a character faster without reading through all the available options by choosing the most straightforward and archetypal option for a hero. Most quick build options don't select languages for you because your director knows better than us which languages will be most useful in your campaign. In addition to being called out in the text, quick build ability options which classes are indicated by a gold icon. Quick build ability options within classes are indicated by a gold icon. If this is your first time making a hero, don't stress. The first time you build a character for Draw Steel, it might take an hour or so. Don't rush the process. Set aside some time, enjoy digging into all the options, and if you can, make your character alongside friends who are playing in the same game. The process gets a lot faster after you've done it once. You can download and print out character sheets and other free resources on the Draw Steel website, mcdm.gg/ds-resources. -resources, ds-resources. Number 1, think. The first thing you should do is think about the kind of hero you want to make. Ask yourself the following questions. Do you fight with weapons, magic, psionics, or some combination of these capabilities? Outside of combat, what do you want your hero to do well? What did you do before becoming a hero? Why did you choose to become a hero? What is your personality like? What people, places, and objects are important to you? How will your hero complement the strengths and weaknesses of other heroes in the party? Ambition is good. Heroes aren't just along for the ride in the director's story. They're active participants in that story, making decisions that change their communities, their worlds, or even the entirety of the timescape. It's good for your hero to have desires, to want to found an organization, seek justice for someone who is wronged, or craft a magic sword that will help you defeat your foes. It's only when that personal ambition becomes more important than the group story that it creates a potential problem. But if you share your character's ambitions with your director, they can weave those desires in with the narrative. Character creation is a great time to do this. As the story evolves, your hero's ambitions could change. That's not a bad thing. Dynamic characters are awesome. But if your hero ends up pursuing different goals over time, make sure you have a conversation with your director about it so they can plan accordingly. Ancestry. Choose your hero's humanoid ancestry from among the range of ancestries available in the game. Devil, Dragon Knight, Dwarf, Wood Elf, High Elf, Hakan, Human, Memenek, Orc, Polder, Revenant, or Time Raider. Future supplements will introduce additional ancestries you can choose from. Culture. Choose or create your hero's culture. Although ancestry gives your hero any number of physiological benefits, your culture describes the community that raised you and gives you language and skills. Choosing skills. This game has lots of skills and has lots of opportunities during character creation to gain them. We recommend recording a list of all the skills you might choose from the different steps of the character creation process, then making your choices at the end of that process rather than flipping back and forth through the book. If you gain the same specific skill from 2 different sources, you can pick a different skill from any skill group. Choose your hero's career. Number 4, career, which describes what you did for a living before you became a hero. A career provides you with skills, an inciting incident that precipitated your adventuring career, and a perk that lets you customize your hero. It might also grant you languages, renown, wealth, or the potential to undertake crafting and research. I speak their language. Choosing languages at the start of a campaign can be hard because you might not know which languages are going to be the most prevalent or useful. You can choose to leave some of the languages you know open until you discover what might be a good choice for the campaign you're playing in. Once you decide to take a language, you can reveal your choice in a dramatic fashion, perhaps during a negotiation where knowing a specific language would help, or when you find a tome that no other hero in your party can read. Number 5, class. Choose your hero's class. This choice has the biggest impact on how your hero interacts with the rules of the game, particularly the rules for combat. Your class provides your starting characteristic scores that determine your character's physical and mental acumen, as well as the stamina and recoveries that determine your physical hardiness. A class also provides your character with skills, several abilities, the unique features that define what your hero can do, and other features and benefits. You can be a sensor, conduit, elementalist, fury, null, shadow, tactician, talent, or troubadour. See Chapter 5 classes for more information on each class, as well as the different types of abilities, signature abilities, heroic abilities, and more the heroes of a specific class have access to. 6. Kit. Your class might grant your hero a kit that helps define your approach to martial combat. The kit you choose provides you with equipment and a fighting style that grants a signature ability, as well as bonuses to one or more of your game's statistics. 7. Add free strikes. A free strike is a combat ability you can use when it's not your turn, representing the simplest and most basic weapon attack you can make. You can do free strikes on your own turn, too. An enemy is foolish enough to walk away from you in melee? Free strike! Every hero is a melee weapon free strike and a ranged weapon free strike. They're all the same until modified by your kit or class. It's up to you to decide what exactly your free strikes are. A thrown dagger, a punch. The design is intended to let you use your imagination. You can also make free strikes on your turn to represent using weapons your hero isn't otherwise themed to use. A Woad Elf Master Archer can stab a too-close enemy with a dagger as a free strike, and a great axe-wielding Orc Fury can use a free strike to hurl a hand axe at a flying enemy staying annoyingly out of melee range. Here's melee weapon free strike and ranged weapon free strike that everybody gets. Melee weapon free strikes, note that they have the charge tag. They are melee, they have the strike tag, and the weapon tag. So your kits affect your melee weapon free strikes. The charge trait, we'll probably see this later, means that you can take the charge action and then do this melee weapon free strike at the end against anyone adjacent. Melee means melee, of course. If you were to do this on your turn, like I said, you can do it as a main action. Did they explain what the action economy is? Whatever. Well, let's keep reading. This is the range, melee one. And attacks one creature or object. You make a power roll with might or agility. On 11, tier 1 is 2 plus the higher of which one you're using. Tier 2, 12 to 16, 5 plus M or A. Tier 3, 17 plus 7 plus M or A. And everyone gets both melee and ranged. The ranged one, a little weaker, 2, 4, and 6. Ranged of 5. I'm sure we'll get more into the rules and all that stuff. We'll explain all of that stuff in further detail. 8. Choose a complication. Complications represent those dramatic moments in a character's backstory that give them pathos, a dramatic reason to be an outsider, doubts about the meaning of life, an urge to avoid intimacy, or an unstoppable vendetta against an enemy from the past. Each complication grants a benefit and a drawback that makes a character more three-dimensional, but complications aren't necessary for making a great hero. Check with your director as to whether your game is using them, and then go to Chapter 8. Number 9, determine details. Once you've created your hero, it's time to determine the additional details of their backstory, appearance, and personality. How do the events of their culture, career, and inciting incident and class tie together into a cohesive narrative? What's their name? What do they look like? Do they have any cool scars? Any sweet tattoos? Do they still sleep with their teddy bear? These kinds of details can help define a well-rounded hero. Step 10. Make connections. Ask the director if all the heroes start the campaign knowing each other. If they do, talk to the other players and build some connections between your characters. If you like, you can use the following prompts to make those connections or to come up with prompts of your own. Some prompts. When you were fighting a monster, one of the party members saved your life. What were you battling and who saved you? In your group, who looks after everyone's health and well-being and makes sure that all characters get along? If it's not you, how do you view this other hero? Who is the grumpiest member of your party? If it isn't you, how do you react to that hero's sour nature? If it is you, how do you react to other characters teasing you or trying to cheer you up? What's one thing your fellow heroes know about you that other people do not? What's your favorite way to bond with your fellow heroes? You've known one of the other heroes in your party longer than the rest. Who is it and how did you meet? Another hero creates food, music, clothing, trinkets, or something else that you enjoy. Who is that hero and what do they make? Another hero is teaching you a new skill. Who is it and what are they teaching you? Answer these questions with the other players present and be sure to get a player's approval if your answer makes use of their character. Next step, we're out of the numbers. No more numbers. Adventuring gear. Drawsteel isn't a game about tracking gear, so you don't need to list every piece of equipment you own on your character sheet. The game assumes that heroes generally have enough to eat or drink, so the rules don't expect you to track food or water either. If your character has a skill that implicitly requires gear, such as lockpicks for the pick lock skill or basic alchemy supplies for use with the alchemy skill, then you have that gear. Likewise, your character is assumed to have standard useful adventuring gear, including a torch, a rope, backpack at minimum. At the director's discretion, you might lose certain gear during an adventure, or your gear could break. If this happens, you might not be able to perform certain tasks as effectively without that gear. Changing character options. If you pick a skill, ability, class, or any other option that you might end up not liking after using it in the game, even your character's ancestry, you can always freely change that option between game sessions. If you want to change some aspect of your character during a session, ask your director. If they say it's fine to swap that aspect out for something else, go for it. You shouldn't be stuck with any option that makes the game less fun for you. If you're changing an option for some other reason other than fun, you need to follow the usual rules for changing that option. For example, you might want to swap a kit out because you think the next adventure is going to require you to have better distance with weapon strikes. Doing so during a respite is talked about in Chapter 6, Kits. If no rule for swapping out an option exists, such as wanting to change a signature ability granted by your class because you think a different damage type would be more helpful against undead in an upcoming encounter, talk to your director. Optional rule. Respite ability changes. An optional rule the director can include in your game is to allow heroes to change any number of signature and heroic abilities granted by their class as a respite activity. This allows heroes to prepare for upcoming encounters and try new builds, but the director and the player should all be comfortable with constantly juggling and learning new abilities. Heroic advancement. Your character's heroic advancement is marked by level. Each time you gain a new level in your class, your stamina increases. and you gain new features or abilities according to your class's advancement, as detailed in Chapter 5, Classes. In the standard setup for the game, heroes gain experience each time they finish a respite. And when you gain sufficient experience, you gain a level during the same respite. The heroic advancement table shows exactly how much XP you need to advance from one level to the next. The amount of experience you gain is cumulative. Alternative advancement. Though many games might advance using the standard setup for heroic advancement, the director can decide that their game uses different advancement. Check with your director about what method of advancement they plan to use. Adjusted XP advancement. Some directors prefer that heroes gain new levels faster or slower to suit the pace of the story. The adjusted XP advancement table is set up for campaigns where heroes advance at double or half the usual pace. Directors can also create their own customized pace for XP-based advancement. Table down here. Milestone advancement. Rather than tracking XP, some games have their heroes advance in level when they achieve a particular story milestone. For example, when a party defeats the main villain of an adventure and foils their dastardly plot, each hero gains a level for achieving this objective, no matter how many obstacles they faced along the way. For many directors using milestone advancement, the end of each adventure within a campaign serves as a milestone for gaining a new level. The director can should share these milestones with the players to encourage them to work toward particular goals and to engage with the story and world the director has prepared. For example, in a campaign where the heroes have to face 9 evil mages, it makes sense that each time the heroes defeat a mage, they gain a level. The director should keep milestone goals flexible, though. Defeating a mage could mean stopping them with violence, using negotiation to make them stand down, or anything else that thwarts their evil plans. Excuse me. Director says so. Some games don't track XP or goals at all. The heroes simply gain a level whenever the director decides it's appropriate for the story. Lame. Cough. Lame. Lame. Cough. This is from the Stronghold and Followers cover, I believe. Human, Devil, Polder, Time Raider, Orc, Woad Elf, High Elf, Dragon Knight, Memenek, Dwarf, Hakan, and Revenant. Chapter 3, Ancestries. Fantastic people inhabit the worlds of Dross Steel. Among them are devils, dwarves, elves, time raiders, and of course humans, whose culture and history dominates many worlds. Your hero is one of these folk. The fantastic ancestry you choose bestows benefits that come from your anatomy and physiology. This choice doesn't grant you cultural benefits such as crafting or lore skills, though. While many game settings have cultures made of mostly one ancestry, other cultures and worlds have a cosmopolitan mix of people. In Drawsteel, ancestry describes how you were born. Culture, part of Chapter 4, background. Culture, part of Chapter 4, background, describes how you grew up. If you want to be a Woad Elf who was raised in a forest among other Woad Elves, you can do that. If you want to play Woad Elf who was raised in an underground city of dwarves, humans, and orcs, you can, by golly, do that too. This chapter details 12 ancestries for the game. Devils originated in the 7 cities of hell and have a supernatural charisma that helps them persuade others. They are similar in stature to humans, and their tones include deep blues, purples, and reds. They sport horns, eyes of all shades, including gold and red, and tails, and some have feathered or leathery wings. Be back. Dragon Knights are muscled, draconic humanoids who stand between 6 and 7 feet tall. The scales covering their reptilian heads, bodies, and tails can be almost any color. All Dragon Knights have wings, but on only a few are those wings big enough to let them fly. Humanoids. Humanoids with stony skin. Dwarves have short and stout bodies. Many carve supernatural runes into their flesh, and some have beards made of crystals. That's fun. Lithe humanoids with finely furred skin in all shades of blue. Woad elves have angular features and large pointed ears akin to a bat's. They possess a supernatural glamour that allows them to blend in with their surroundings when they wish to hide. Stately and graceful high elves have tall, willowy bodies, pointed ears, and smoother skin than most other humanoids. Rare metal inlays such as gold, platinum, palladium, and iridium act as organic components within their skin. Strange. The truest form of any high elf is hidden from most, sometimes even from themselves, thanks to a supernatural glamour that makes them more attractive to others, whatever that might mean to an individual. This glamour transcends physical appearance, also slightly altering a high elf's tone and smell. Interesting. Descended from stone giants, the mighty Hakan stand over 9 feet tall and have well-muscled bodies made of organic stone. They are the largest ancestry in the book! ! Humans are the most numerous people in Orden and many other fantasy worlds. In Drosteel, humans have all the diversity that our species displays in real life, and they can sense the presence of supernatural energy. Originating on Axiom, the plane of uttermost law, Memenek are a machine people made of metal, marble, glass, and other inorganic materials. Their bodies are lightweight, making them easier to move and letting them fall at slower speeds. Orcs have skin in green tones and stand slightly taller and wider than humans. A supernatural energy they call the Blood Fire flows through their veins, igniting colorful lines in an orc skin during life or death battles. Polder, the smallest of the ancestries in this book. Polders stand no taller than 3.5 feet. They look like smaller humans, and they have the ability to blend in with the shadows. No hero starts their life as a revenant. Rather, these undead creatures return to the world of the living because they have dire business that must be finished. A character of any ancestry can become a revenant. Travelers of the timescape, the Time Raiders, or Kuranzoi, as they call themselves, Kuranzoi, have 4 arms and a singular ocular sensor instead of a pair of eyes. Many have innate psionic abilities that make them capable warriors. On the origin of species, Orden is a fantasy world. It works on principles similar to those that many people throughout history believed govern the real world. I don't know, a god did it probably. Humans, elves, orcs, dwarves, dragons, and all have creator gods. The elder gods, for 4 of whom made the world for some reason. Maybe they were bored. The fashion among those gods for creating new intelligent species petered out after the orcs. Once humans came along and invented war, it kind of stopped being fun. And maybe all species were created by gods. That's certainly what a lot of people throughout our own history assumed. Orden has no Darwin and probably won't ever. There's still inheritance. People expect children to look like their parents, but there aren't evolutionary pressures except on a very local scale. And in a world where powerful, world-altering magics are available, mortals sometimes try to recreate the gods' efforts. Some succeed, and new, intelligent-speaking peoples are born. However, mortals are not gods and lack their ineffable wisdom. They are, in fact, very effable. Many have sought the power to create. It is available to any sorcerer of near godlike power with the right rituals, though these days that power is very obscure. Creating new intelligent species was easier for mortal wizards back in the youth of the world when magic was friskier. In every instance in recorded history, attempts by mortals to make obedient servitor species backfired. The steel dwarves worked marvels with Valiar, the true metal, and the miracle mineral Iridas, known as Prismacore, that grants objects a semblance of life. Eventually, their science and magics produced the Omnivoc, machines that were self-aware. Perhaps uniquely, when the dwarves realized they'd created beings equal to themselves, they stopped their work and gave their creations full rights and independence, preferring to work with them rather than attempt and inevitably fail to be their masters. Normally, it doesn't work out that nicely. Even with the best of intentions, things go awry. The Dragon Phalanx were created by good King Omen's wizard Vitae to be the perfect knights, dispensing justice throughout the lands, but the same sorceries that grant self-awareness also grant independence, agency. And though they enjoyed 30 years of peace and justice, eventually the Dragon Knights were betrayed by one of their own, seduced by the power offered by Ajax. The law of unintended consequences applies to the just and the unjust alike. Usually, when some powerful being tries to create an intelligent species, it is for less than virtuous reasons. The Sinlaroi are responsible for several intelligent species in the timescape, each an attempt to create a perfectly obedient servitor species. The most notorious example are the Kuran-Zoi, the Time Raiders, who rebelled almost immediately and who carry a burning hate for the voiceless talkers to this day. A perhaps less egregious use of this power is called quickening, used when a powerful mage lives in and amongst some clever species just on the cusp of self-awareness. These instances, which are much more numerous than creating a new species from whole cloth, are more like the concept of uplifting found in science fiction. The mage or witch or shaman didn't create anything, they just gave these cute, clever frog things a little boost, a little nudge. And suddenly there are anguilados walking around having conversations with each other, wondering when someone will invent a fabric that doesn't get moldy in the swamp. This also carries serious ethical repercussions. You didn't create anguilados, you screwed up some perfectly good frogs. Look at them, you gave them anxiety. This is only how it works on Orden. You may have completely different explanations for why there are several different intelligent species walking around in your world, or no explanation. Or competing and irreconcilable theories. Or competing and irreconcilable theories on the matter. Use whatever inspires you. Irreconcilable. At the end of the day, if you throw out all of this and replace it with something you made up, it will be better because it's yours. Names by ancestry. Obviously, you're free to invent whatever name you want for your character, and your director might have their own setting that uses different cultures than those in Orden, but if you want to pick an Orden-appropriate name for your hero, keep on reading. Equally obviously, names are cultural, not biological. Your character probably has a name appropriate to whatever culture they were born into or grow up in. A human raised by Hakan would probably have a Hakan name. Last names and by names. Most people living in Orden, and this is especially true of Vasteloria, live in villages. They do not have and do not use last names or family names. Everyone in the village knows who you mean when you refer to William, even if there's more than one William in the village. You can usually tell who someone's referring to from context. Sometimes folks prepend our to someone's name, meaning the one related to or otherwise concerned with me and my family, our William, for instance. If that's not enough, folks use another identifier known as a by name. If there were two boys in the village named Much, one of them might be called Much the Miller's son to distinguish them from the other lad. If you leave your village regularly, some say to trade with others in a distant market, then your by names might be the place you're from. Alan from the village in the Dale might become known as Alan from the Dale, or even Alan a Dale. But everyone back home just calls you Alan. A by name might refer to your profession. Clyde the Cartwright is a perfectly normal by name, but no one you met would assume Cartwright was your family name. People who live permanently in a very large city like Capital, use family names because almost no first name is sufficiently unique to identify you. And Marissa, the Cartwright's daughter, quickly evolves into Marissa Cartwright. Most nobles in Orden also use the name of the area they rule as part of their name. When someone refers to Lord Edmund Bedegar, everyone listening silently without thinking about it adds "of" between the name and the place. Edmund is both Edmund and the Lord of Bedegar, and Edmund, Lord of Bedegar, and therefore sometimes Lord Edmund Bedegar. Even though Bedegar looks like a last name to us and is being used in that manner, sometimes it is not exactly his last name, it's still just another kind of byname. Unlike remote villages, well-settled areas where many towns and villages are all networked by roads often do use surnames to help differentiate one William from the other 20 within densely populated areas. Did this need to be explained this in depth? Names and gender. Most cultures in Vesloria make a distinction between masculine and feminine names, though not all do. And for some cultures that make such a distinction, almost no one outside the culture can tell the difference. Among those cultures which do make a distinction between masculine and feminine names, there are always names that could refer to a person of any gender. Here in the real world, you can't tell a person's gender just from the name Shane. This is mostly because which names are considered masculine or feminine changes over time, and when this happens, there's a period, maybe a few generations, where the name could refer to a person of any gender. Of course, there's no law, neither metaphorically nor literally, that requires your character to go by their birth name. They might not even know their birth name depending on what happened after they were born. It's not unusual, especially among talents, for a hero to adopt a moniker or sobriquet instead of a name. And in some cultures, there's a tradition of changing your name, or at least how you prefer to be known, as you go through different stages of life. High elves sometimes adopt a wholly new name when they reach a certain age, or more commonly, they choose a different component of their name. When a mist curls around dying embers was a young woman, she was known as Mist. Now that she's the master of the Tower of Translation, she's known as Embers. Authentic or comedic. For some players, choosing a good name, by which they mean authentic to the setting, is important and can take a while. Because the right name can ground a character in the world, and this can help the player feel more immersed in the fictional reality. It also communicates to the other players that you're serious about the game and your hero. For other players, choosing a comedic joke name communicates the opposite. You're here to have fun and screw around, and taking things seriously is something you already have to do all week, so you pick a ridiculous name just to get a laugh because that's what you're serious about. The choice of name is an important one because it says a lot about you and how you view the game as a whole. Here's some example names. I'm not gonna... Should I... Example names by ancestry. Devil names: Ampeth, Arian, Cyric, Frisia, Ilya, Orith, Qualo, Urialia, Iliath, Zori, gender neutral, Halciar, Ilion, Karia, Moriel, Orliath, masculine, Boliarvik, Senaf, Dult, Jaro, Kuryalkin, Radiarsk, Tessiar, Turavik, Ulian, Vilyaroth. Dragon Knight names: Originad, Sirijax, Kaikorovar, Galiarx, Korazajan, Koravamajax, Orazarviax, Uraquaxakar, Yithrix, Zerinavam, gender neutral, Bakadrazar, Sinasiar, Lorikorovix, Vinkarajan, Zykorajax, masculine, Arkazavar, Danarax, Denoxavanax, Kalexiriax, Koravanam, Raijorazan, Vanazar, Vorakazanar, Zakariar, Zakejorazvax. Dwarf names: Dazria, Deka, Jorva, Giria, Kirza, Kurath, Lurza, Zareth, Zir. Gender neutral: Arzek, Keth, Oric, Kair, Korath. Masculine: Darzak, Dazran, Jorik, Durak, Dur, Gavak, Kaz, Kazan, Zar, and Zarek. Woad elf names. Elves in general have a casual attitude toward gender, it having no direct bearing on procreation for them. Normal elf, upon learning how humans mate. You mean like animals? They tend to view the various sex-linked traits associated among other ancestries with masculinity or femininity as a kind of fashion to be taken up or discarded as the mood suits. Over one life, any elf might wear masculine features or feminine features or both many times. For woad elves, this often means adopting a new name, or a different version of the same name. Leandros might become Lilandria. Leandros might become Leandra, for instance. Elvir, feminine. Elvir, Evuarwick. Ilwiv, Yorwith, Yarwin, Methanin, Nimue, Regith, Viarwin, Yasalwith. Gender neutral: Oriswith, Kochelvik, Higelvik, Liarian, Tuiso. Masculine: Kaliarvik, Siliv, Idior, Fifflevik, Filevik, Wilmik, Leandros, Ogilvar, Radiarvin, Real, Tefirdvin. High elf names are poetic. They are an attempt to capture a fleeting, often contradictory impulse or emotion. They sometimes contain references to the natural world. They are never meant to be taken literally, and they are not an attempt to make a character feel heroic. Examples: the anticipation of a sigh upon his lips, a crown of starlight on winter snow, the earth cries, the skies divide, echoes of autumn heat, edges of a leaf torn by the wind, every flake of snow a memory, a heart that will not yield the stars, the last star fading with morning, a rain of glass over a sea of dreams, the sun reflected in a lover's tear. Hakan names: Adrina, Arawani, Barsina, Irdabava, Kiandat, Mavane, Osarabi, Satari, Tiriti, Ulavesh. Gender neutral: Adaska, Kurashev, Iramos, Sandauka, Ulian. Masculine: Andusaya, Artabanu, Dayu, Farnaspa, Fartavis, Jamaspa, Kosra, Kithara, Saramas, Utana. Western Vesloria human names. Human names vary widely by culture. The following examples are from Western Vesloria: Brenwyn, Demelza, these are female, Esbeth, Gwynbehivir, Merwyn, Margaret, Meliora, Rowena, Tamara, Wena. Gender neutral: Ashley, Bryn, Janet, Morgan, Tehran. Masculine: Brees, Cadvir, Dyphon, Edmund, Jeffrey, Gwydon, Hedden, Richard, Tegan, Hathan. Memonic names: Abendaska, Asharia, Devadaya, Gandharaji, Kunismaya, Priyapta, Ruthadeva, Uravashi, Fanarishka, Yashovala. Gender neutral: Jamatria, Lotariska, Mitaritra, Satayarit, Talyana. Masculine: Ayabashka, Damayana, Devasoto, Dhiravata, Kadurmata, Harakshathra, Kasa Mandri, Kavetra, Virabhanu, Vitarkoya. Winston loves this. Orc names: Eskili, Dorviath, Jordeor, Koroshka, Korisa, Korva, Maraska, Vakara, Vorovi, Zorva. Gender neutral: Dorakor, Goravik, Ketavek, Meteor, Orosk. Masculine: Dusavor, Doravek, Jordek, Korvok, Medazor, Pakadrask, Rojak, Rokor, Uvarsk, Vordakov. Polder names. For reasons not well understood, polders in Vesloria use surnames. First names seem chosen to imply a degree of sophistication, or at least what polders consider sophisticated, whilst last names are typically common compound words. No one knows why they do this. Feminine: Agatha, Agatha, I like it. Amaryllis, Beverly, Esmeralda, Merceline, Modesty, Penelope, Rosemary, Ursula, Weatherly. Gender neutral: Bellamy, Bethel, Carrington, Madison, Mallory. Masculine: Amesley, Alderson, Bancroft, Beechwood, Billingsworth, Broderick, Langston, Owlsvik, Patterson, and Willoughby. Surnames: Bottlebrush, Bracegirdle, Cheesewright, Cobblestone, Cordwainer, Lamplighter, Pinwhistle, Thistle, Thrush, Twobuckle, Underhill. Underhill, eh? Revenants most often keep whatever names they had in life. They may have any number of reasons to adopt a new name, in which case that name would reflect their reasons for doing so. Perhaps they adopt a moniker like many talents do, or they choose a new name from their original culture or something completely different. Time Raider names. The Kiranzoi names typically end with an epithet given when the young Time Raider comes of age that reflects their uniquely rebellious nature. Akaratar, these are feminine. Iprit, Neradmak, Oravika, Fakala, Kixix, Quixix, Tashrika, Thosivik, Manri, Virvikin. Gender neutral: Druator, Morpfan, Motira, Signetir, Thirip. Masculine: Estra Ogor, Dakara, Ikok, Ijelek, Geslik, Lazir, Mavikik, Dokar, Uvik, Vaantek. Some epithets: the acerbic, the cynic, the heretic, the impious, the irritant, the skeptical, the sneering, the surly, the unbeliever, the unruly. We made it. Made it through the names. Measurements. How tall is a polder? How long does a dwarf live? The ancestry measurement table provides the average adult height and weight ranges and life expectancy for each of the ancestries in the chapter. These measurements are only averages. Many folks in the world exist outside of them, so your hero can too. Revenants aren't on the table since their height and weight is based on their previous ancestry. Likewise, they live until destroyed or moving on after completing their unfinished business. Humans have the potential to live a little longer in Orden than they do in the real world thanks to the presence of magic. We got height in feet in inches, weight in pounds, and life expectancy in years. Interesting. The elves lived 1,200 to 3,000 years. That's the longest. Pretty long. I feel like Time Raiders would live longer. Am I crazy? Anyways. Starting size and speed. Unless otherwise noted, a character... That's what... Probably should be the zoomed in anyways. For the people at home. Whatever. I had the zoom perfect before and now I messed it up. Alright. Did I say the starting size and speed? Unless otherwise noted, a character of any of these ancestries is size 1M and a speed 5 and stability 0. An ancestry provides you with an ability. See abilities. Maybe we'll just do one. I like the book. I like the book view though. Anyways. Ancestry traits. Each ancestry has one or more significant traits, signature traits, which your hero gets for free if they take that ancestry. This is a defining feature that other heroes of your ancestry also possess. Ancestries also have purchased traits, but you don't get every purchased trait your ancestry has to offer. Instead, your ancestry provides a budget of ancestry points you can use to select traits. Each trait has a point cost that you pay to grant its benefit to your hero. For example, the Devil Ancestry has the signature trait Silver Tongue and 3 ancestry points to spend on 7 different traits. A player creating a Devil hero could select Barbed Tail, Glowing Eyes, and Hellsight, each of which costs 1 ancestry point, or they could select one of those ancestry traits plus Impressive Horns or Wings, each of which costs 2 ancestry points. But they couldn't select both Impressive Horns and Wings since their combined cost of 4 exceeds the ancestry points budget for the Devil. The Devil. I'll read these next time. I have to feed the dogs. They're riveted and thrilled.